What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where me and my good friend Danny over there, Dr. Zayas God, discuss horror movies and streaming shows. We have had a rough couple of weeks. We've been covering this show, Monarch. We've been trying to make it work. Spoilers, Danny. The last few episodes have been interesting, but we needed something different. We needed to throw something in that was going to excite us. And so there was just an announcement this week that they're making a sequel to Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. And that movie came out 20 years ago in 2006. And now they're working on a sequel. So, what a perfect time for me to watch the movie for the first time and for Danny to champion this movie that he has championed before. So, Danny, in general, why have you always spoken highly about this movie?
Uh, I mean, I I don't know what your opinion of the movie is. I guess I'll find out soon enough. But
Right.
I, I've never met I've never met anyone in the horror space that doesn't like this movie. At least like doesn't like it. And I know most horror fans seem to love it when they see it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been that like that movie that whenever somebody says, "Hey, what's a really good horror movie that, not everybody has seen that you could recommend?" It's one of the first ones that always pops to my mind because it's it came out in 2006. It feels like, and this is something that I was going to talk about a little bit later, but I'll just jump right in. Like the one of the last times, not one of the last times that we talked about a movie, not just like Monarch or one of the shows that we cover. Um, we talked about Scream 7, which is still out in theaters. In some theaters, it's probably making its way onto VOD now. And when people think of meta horror, they think of the Scream films.
Yeah.
And this movie came out after Scream 3, but 5 years before Scream 4.
Yeah.
And I think this did something completely new in the metaverse. Like the idea with Scream movies was always like the audience knows about horror movies. So we're going to make horror movies with the conceit that the audience knows these tropes.
Yeah.
What Behind the Mask does is it it takes it even for me a step further, where it says not only are these the tropes, but they're based on reality. And in the
Right.
movie, like the opening 15 minutes of this movie are so much ridiculous fun, because they're talking about how you have like this news crew who's doing the, you know, we know the names of Fred Krueger and Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, but it's talking about them like they're real people who've committed real murders
Right.
in real places: Haddonfield, Crystal Lake, Springwood. And we meet this character who is not a Randy Meeks who has watched a bunch of horror movies and thus knows what to do and what not to do. No, he is a budding serial killer who's using these killers as his, like, you know, uh, they are his inspirations. And you get the meta side, you get the meta parts from the other side. So, like,
Yep.
all the breakdowns of him talking about how much cardio you need because you have to look like you're walking, but then you have to keep up with all these people. Uh, and you get to watch a slasher movie from the slasher's point of view, which
Right.
back in 2006 was a completely new, really new thing. And
Right.
also, this was right in the middle, 2006, of the VH1 Behind the Music craze. And I always kind of felt like um, it felt like a Behind the Music. It felt like, did you ever see The Simpsons behind the
Yes,
it
of course.
it felt like the Simpsons behind the show episode.
Yep.
Uh, but it also doesn't insult the audience. It also doesn't, insult the genre. You can
No.
tell it's done with a respect for the past. I mean, my God, you have Kane Hodder in a cameo. You have Robert Englund, of course, as a main character.
Right.
You have Zelda Rubinstein there to deliver some exposition. It and then and then the movie actually does something completely interesting in its final act, kind of flipping the script on what we as the audience think is going to happen. And I just I have as usual rambling for 5 minutes. I have for 20 years I've loved this movie. I've championed this movie. I have tried to support this movie. I have this incredible Scream Factory Blu-ray that I watched last night that has a ton of special features. So I'll give them a shout out. And anybody who has not seen it, they should go and pick up that Blu-ray. It's awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
I met Scott Wilson years back when I was writing for Geeks of Doom. Athena and I would get press passes to all of these horror conventions.
Yeah.
Not just the big ones, not just Comic Con, but we would go to a bunch of smaller ones. We went to a Walker Stalker Con, and I met Scott Wilson there. And
Right.
so Scott Wilson passed away in I think 2018. So I'm gonna say this was probably 2015 to 16 in
Yeah.
that area. And I
Yeah.
remember meeting him, and most people, of course, wanted to talk to him about Herschel,
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, things like that. I wanted to talk about this movie, and I wanted to talk about why there wasn't a sequel to this movie. I literally had that conversation with Scott Wilson at a horror convention. And he even said to me back then that, they had a script. It went through a bunch of rewrites. They thought they were going to have the money for it. Things fell through, and he's just kind of sitting and waiting and hoping that things come together. And if that conversation took place in 2016, that was 10 years ago. It was 10 years after the movie came out. And here we finally are. It's 2026. And to take us back to you starting this video, we just found out that just a couple days ago that they are finally doing a sequel to this movie.
Yeah.
And this movie that, a lot of people had never heard of is suddenly, I see it being posted about everywhere on social media. Um, Horror fans talking about it. I shared with you a great interview that Mike Ingold did for Rue Morgue with the director Scott Glosserman about the project.
Right.
It's very exciting for me. And rewatching it last night, I sat there last night for 85 minutes thinking to myself, how did this movie never get a fucking sequel? It
Yeah.
make it's so and how did nobody in the cast and very few people in the crew like go off and and I know that people in the crew went off and did successful things that's written about in the article, but like Scott Glosserman, the director, doesn't have a long IMDb page. Um,
Right.
the star of the movie, the guy who plays Leslie Vernon, Nathan Bizel, he does not have a very long IMDb page as an actor. He has a longer page as I think he does like crew work um, in TV.
Sure.
But yeah, like a lot of the cast of this movie, like haven't done other movies. And I'm just excited that they're getting things back together. The main cast, Robert Englund, Scott Glosserman, it kind of feels like after 20 years, kind of like a vindication as a fan of this movie that like there's this rousing anticipation now for a part two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because this movie is sort of the antithesis of what we've been talking about with Monarch, where this is someone has an interesting concept, somebody has an interesting idea, and they're able to fulfill it and make it, but with a very like small budget, but like a really interesting concept. And it's something that I'm sure I could see the sources for it, the inspirations for it. I think about the 1992 book Men, Women, and Chainsaws, which I think you know that book as well, about like gender and slasher films. Like it feels like the writer read that book and sort of was like, okay, well, let's make this movie where it's from the killer's perspective and we're trying to explain their mentality of why they're doing these things versus their sort of their ingrained backstory, which they even call an anchor story in this. Like they call like their backstory an anchor story. Do you remember, Danny? We watched a movie where it was about like a woman that would dance in a booth and it's the apocalypse. And then like this preacher woman gets stuck in the strip club with her. Do you remember that movie?
Uh, is it called Glory Hole?
No. That's Glorious, and we covered that too. It came out around the same time.
Okay.
It even kind of feels similar. Whatever the name of the movie is, we interviewed Michael Moresi, who's a comic book writer, and he is a he's written that movie. He's written novels. He was an awesome guest. Anyway, Michael Moresi wrote that with Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley's got this comic called Hack Slash, which is about Cassie Hack, who goes around with a guy who looks like a slasher, and they basically go take out slashers that have been invented for this comic. And in that Hack Slash comic, which is a great book, they reference Freddy and Chucky and Jason all the time. So it's like this idea that like slashers are part of our culture, they're part of the world in that comic, and they are in this movie too. And I just really loved that feeling of like thinking about Men, Women, and Chainsaws, thinking about Hack Slash while I'm watching this movie. And you could tell that they really, really wanted to capture why someone would be a slasher. Like when you have the character's backstory, like Jason, they drowned because all the counselors were banging and stuff. And Freddy, he was a pedophile or whatever that got burned to a crisp by the angry parents. But when you think of it as like they know, they're aware of their like role, and they come up with it. That was the most exciting part of this movie, and it's a major part of this movie.
Yeah, I love the dinner sequences with Scott Wilson and his wife, where like he's a retired serial killer, a retired slasher, and there's no apology, this and that. It's like, oh well, there's good in the world, so we need to anchor that good with evil. So we're actually doing like a good thing by leveling things out. And like the way that like just the rapport between Scott Wilson and his wife, where he's like, "We'll catch you," and she's like, "Well, you caught me," and you kind and like you really like part of me wants to know that backstory and be like, "Oh, so she was the final girl, but then she fell in love with the slasher, and the slasher was like, yeah, all right, like." Look, I'll take you
You're pretty
home.
hot. You're a lot younger than me, so I'll take you. Yeah. No,
There's so much of that stuff, and then like Leslie goes into detail about like all like the phallic imagery and all of this stuff, and it's like there's all this crazy like, and there's like actual psychology in the movie to explain slasher killers, and it almost feels like that this movie was in part written as like a gotcha to like Siskel and Ebert, who would come on every week and tell you why the slasher movies of the 80s were the worst movies, and that there was nothing but sex and the murder of women, and that anyone who likes them is depraved. And this movie is talking about how she's gonna go into the tool shed and she's gonna grab the largest, hardest, most phallic symbol she can, and then she's gonna run down the birth canal to the apple press. And you're like, what? And it's this great breakdown of the horror genre, while again taking it from a different point of view. Like we've seen discussions of like the final girl. We've seen Scream and the Scream franchise at this point that 3 times the Scream trilogy break down a slasher movie, a sequel, a trilogy, and kind of tell the audience like this is what you can expect here.
Right.
But we've never seen it from this side where the killer is literally leading the audience through the story and saying, so here's what I'm going to do, here's how I'm going to do it. Let me show you how everything is set up along the way, explaining everything you've ever thought about in a horror movie. Like, oh my God, why don't they just jump out the fucking window? Oh my God, you got to be kidding me. The fucking axe takes one swing and the thing falls off. Come on. Like, the car doesn't start. Of course, the car doesn't start. It's like all of these details, all of these tropes. It feels like Scott Glosserman and David J. Steve, who wrote the screenplay,
Yeah.
that they studied all of
Hmm.
those horror movies, those slasher movies, those Jasons, those Freddys, those Michael Myers movies. But instead of just focusing on like the kills or the sex and the violence, which is what audiences are trained to want, they were like, no, we want to make a movie for like the really nerdy horror fans.
Yeah.
It's funny because like we've complained about how Star Wars movies have been like, let's explain every detail about all of these characters. But it
Right.
feels like here it's deconstructing a genre and a specific tropes. It feels like we're being let in on a secret
Yeah.
instead of we're just being told information that we don't really need or want to know.
Yes, and that's a really, really great point because it goes along with what we've been saying with Monarch, right? Because we've been saying with Monarch that there's not a lot of like source material to work with to make something compelling. Like the lore of the kaiju is not interesting. It's just monsters fight each other. The lore of slashers is simultaneously super convoluted and weird, or just like basic and simple, right? Because the story itself of the slasher is just basically a guy kills a bunch of horny teenagers, right? There's no substance to that. But then a lot of times they'll make these convoluted lores, which this movie comments on too, about these convoluted lores too. But this movie takes the part that has no depth in slashers and gives it depth. It's like this is the reason why they do this. And yes, what you said, I'm really glad you brought this up because I love the fact that he like explains in detail. Okay, they're going to go upstairs and they're going to find these people in the bedroom, but I have to make sure that they don't find them until this point because then they'll do this. And then like he's like, okay, we're going to wear down all these weapons and stuff in the tool shed so they can't use them. And you know, I'm wearing a bulletproof vest. Like all these details that as you watch the slasher, you just kind of go through the motions and they just happen. You just expect them, but he's methodically planned them out like he's the Punisher or Batman or something.
There's one line in this movie that it always stuck with me, and I just think it's such a funny line, but it also
yeah,
makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Especially if you're dealing with a slasher who is human, and that
yeah.
is what he says to her, to the film crew. He goes, statistically, I'm at a huge disadvantage here.
Right, right, right,
The idea that there's 8 kids in this house, there's
right.
8 teenagers in the house, and
Yeah,
he's just one serial killer. So it's like
right,
he's got to go and kill all 8 of them, and they just have to stop one of him. He's like, I'm at a huge disadvantage. And
right.
that always stuck with me as like, yeah, that's really funny because yeah, and the thing that you were bringing up about how this movie talks about the convoluted backstories, Jason is at any moment a
Deadite.
mentally a mentally challenged adult who survived a drowning and is out for revenge for his dead mother, or he's a deadite or he's just a zombie, or he's a Franken Jason, or he's a you know, space enhanced, you know, Uber Jason. You know,
Right.
Michael Myers is at any time um the living embodiment of absolute evil, or he's just Laurie Strode's brother,
Right.
or you know, he's, you know, stalking her for no reason, or he has, you know, magic powers, or he doesn't.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, like Freddy Krueger is either a dream demon, or he can possess people, or he's, you know, or he has a kid, and there's the movies, the franchises trample over each other in
Yep.
terms of backstory, and
Right.
this movie does such a nice job because he establishes a backstory at the beginning, but
Yeah.
then we find out that that backstory is basically just made up, and
Right.
that it's he's just like adopted the lore of this small town
Right.
because he needs a backstory. So
Right.
he's the kid that went over the falls, and then you find out from Robert Englund, no, he's not. He's just a crazy guy from Reno, Nevada, and it's like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, good.
and he's even he's like laying out fake evidence. He's built this phony history into microfilm. It's like the how far he goes to establish his own
Lord.
lore
Hmm.
is phenomenal. Like the
Yeah.
storyline details that takes is so impressive.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I really appreciated this movie. I really enjoyed it. You've talked a lot about Scream, and I think you really could do like a triple feature, not a double feature, but I think you could do a triple feature, and it essentially covers a window of 15 years. You could do Scream from 1996, then this from 2006, then you could do Cabin in the Woods from 2011, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of connective tissue between this and Cabin in the Woods as well, where it's like we have to do this ritual. It has to be this way. It looks like a slasher, and it's good for the whole world, right? So I mean, like I'm sure that this inspired Cabin in the Woods in some level. One thing I don't know where to like organically fit this into our discussion, but I have to bring this up. The movie is like a mockumentary, and at times it feels kind of like a This Is Spinal Tap, like where it's like it's a comedy, and then other times it doesn't. What's really great, I think was a smart choice, was that it's a hybrid because it's like half mockumentary and then just half straight up just horror movie like slasher, mainly towards the end. But the part I have to bring up where I'm like, where do I fit this in? Is the woman that is the reporter for the mockumentary or the documentary, Angela Goethals. So she plays Taylor in the movie. No joke, Danny. She looks exactly as if my daughter Clementine was an adult. Like she just looks like that's who Clementine's gonna grow
I
into.
can I can see that. The second you said she looks exactly like my, I swear to God, I was like, oh yeah, I could see it. I could
Yep,
see it.
yep, yep.
Um
So
I
it's weird seeing like her, and then like I just kept thinking of Clem the whole time. But go ahead, man. Yeah, yeah.
No, but to what you were just saying though, I think what adds to that ability that this movie has to play as both a horror movie but also to be funny is that its protagonist, Leslie Vernon, is an insanely likable person. The
Yeah,
fact
yeah,
that, and that again is such a fucking weird and an amazing thing that this movie does, because
yeah,
what is he? He's admitting, I am a murderer. I'm a serial killer. I am a slasher villain.
yeah,
They watch him and record him committing murders before even the final barn scene. Like he kills the librarian, Zelda Rubinstein. Um, and he's just incredibly personable. I Athena was laying down, and the only Blu-ray player that works in my house is the one in the bedroom. So I said, "Hey, I have like 45 minutes left of this movie. I'm just gonna put it on, go to sleep. Sorry." And she was up for a little bit, and I said to her as we were watching, I think it's the scene where he's applying the makeup and
Yep.
he's like talking about how even the makeup is like, I put in some flame retardant, I put in some stuff that keeps, like, that boxers use so that if I get hit in the face my eyes don't swell. And then he does this one thing where like he goes like, "Ugh." And I said to her, I said, doesn't he have a little bit of a Jim Carrey vibe to him?
Absolutely. Yep.
And
1000%. Yeah.
which again is weird to me that for the last 20 years Nathan Beisel has not really done anything acting wise. Like
Yeah.
he's only had like a couple bit parts.
Yeah.
He has uh, a very Jim Carrey esque quality to him. He's likable. He's funny. Uh, when he gets serious, the couple times in the movie he gets serious, he flips on a dime. And if you've seen The Truman Show or Eternal Sunshine, or I know the movie wasn't good, but like The Number 23, is that the horror? Is it just called The Number 23?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, like I know that wasn't a good movie, but Jim Carrey has that in him where he's Jim Carrey, he's Ace Ventura, he's the mask, but also he can kind of flip on a dime. And you see that a lot in the Truman Show, even where like he starts to realize what's going on and like he turns on Laura Dern. Not Laura Dern. Was it Laura Dern?
No, no.
Uh
I'll find her. Laura Kinney, is that her name? Or
Laura Linney. Laura Linney.
Laura Linney. Laura Linney. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Yeah.
Yes. Where like she starts doing the commercial and he's like, who are you talking to? There's nobody here. And like Nathan Beisel has that quality to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that ups the enjoyment of the movie and also the level of the movie as to what you were saying, like that comedy aspect, but also as a horror movie because you're weirdly rooting for this guy until the last 20 minutes where you realize, oh, wait, no, I don't want him to kill. Like, I'm fine. You're like, I'm okay with him killing those people, but I don't want him to kill these people. These people I've spent the last hour with. I like these people. And
Right. Right. And I think the scene that is the most telling of that is when we finally see the camera crew, the guys behind the cameras, and there's the cameraman. He captures the cameraman in a field, and the cameraman is like really, you can tell in his voice, it feels real how he's like saying, like, hey, come on, you know me, like, like spare me, basically. And then he breaks his neck. Really great acting on his part where the cameraman takes off his mask and you just see his face and he's got this cold look on his face, but it's like just completely inhuman. Whereas like 20 minutes ago, he's like joking around. Well, actually, even a better example is like 5 minutes ago when he realized the camera crew is about to back out. He like says to them, "Hey, it was good working with you." And
let's say our goodbyes now.
Right. And I mean, I just said that he realized it, but he actually didn't realize it. He kind of knew they were going to do that, and he was planning his kills to go along with that. Go ahead.
I also love just the style of the filmmaking, and this could be jarring for certain people, but the movie is shot documentary style because it's this film crew and this reporter Taylor, played by Angela
Wonderful.
Goethals. She's
Yeah.
like reporting on Leslie Vernon and following him and doing this like behind the slashing, you know, TV program. So the whole movie is done documentary style until he goes back in the house, and then it becomes a movie. And now the three people who have been your film crew, now they're just characters in the horror movie for the
Right.
last 25 minutes.
Right.
And that could be very jarring where all of a sudden you're like, wait, what? This isn't what just happened. I think one of the Wreck movies does that. I think Wreck 2, where like halfway through the movie, it's just like, you know what? We're done with the documentary follow found footage style. We're just going to make this a regular horror movie now.
Right.
And it does play with your head a little bit, because now you have to look at these three people, two of whom had never been on screen for the first hour.
Right.
Suddenly you just hear their voices. Now they're characters in the slasher movie.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit. Like, this is a completely, it really throws off your expectations of what's going to happen in the last 20 minutes. And I think the twist at the end is phenomenal. I don't know if we want to get into it. I don't think it matters. It's been 20 years. The sequel is coming out, but like, yeah, the idea that like the twist being, spoiler alert for a 20-year-old movie, that his virginal survivor girl that he's been following the whole movie actually rides reverse cowgirl, and she is not a virginal survivor girl, and that
No.
the whole plot from the beginning was set up for Taylor, Angela Goethals, who is in fact a virgin and is in fact basically the final girl of this movie, out of nowhere in the last like really 15 minutes. And it's a great twist. It's a twist that does not ruin the movie, I think, because upon like multiple rewatches, it doesn't like, it's not like a plot point or a twist where when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, well, none of this makes sense now. It
Right.
still
Right.
makes perfect sense. It all still works. And it's just really, really, I just love everything about this movie.
Ah. Ha. Okay. Well, let me ask you a question though. There's one part when they're having a discussion with Scott Wilson with Eugene, and the way they refer to Michael and Freddie and Jason, they make it sound like there's more to them, like that they might actually be supernatural. They don't like outright say that, but there's this look, especially on uh Scott Wilson's face, where he's like almost hinting at something deeper. And I was wondering if is this whole ritual, the Leslie's life's work, is it actually something that does make him supernatural? Because I mean, at the end of the movie, over the credits, they have this sequence where this mortician is getting ready to do an autopsy, and he like sits up with his burnt body. Now, you could 1000% say it's just realistic and everybody is just a serial killer with like super advanced planning, or you could take it that next step further. Do you think it's just that he lived because he had that fucking makeup on?
I don't know. I also want to know how much of the original film's budget was spent to get Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads to play through the
Yes,
entire end credits.
yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
but I don't know. And I think in part, did you read the interview that the Rue Morgue interview?
I didn't get a
So
chance. I was on my walk. Yeah.
um that interview was done by Michael Gingold. One of, he's a guy who, if you've ever seen a horror documentary, Michael Gingold. I consider him a friend. He hosts co-hosts Final Exam trivia with Ted Gagan once every month to 2 months at Rock Bar here in New York City. The best and hardest horror trivia in the city. I've won a few times. Well, my team has won a few times. I haven't won a few times. But he did a great interview with Scott Glosserman. And one of the things that they talk about is like, how does is Leslie going to come back in Behind the Mask 2, The Return of Leslie Vernon?
Mm.
Is he going to be a charred, like, you know, special effects laden character? And Scott Glosserman kind of hints at the fact, well, he did wear that fire retardant, stuff, and, he was well prepared. But I think one of the things that they talk about in the interview that's also interesting is one of the reasons that it's taken 20 years for this is that the script has changed. And I think that in part the script has changed so much because technology has changed so much.
Okay.
Um, and I think that a lot of the meta aspects of the movie have been done in other films over the last 20 years. You brought up Cabin in the Woods, which is a phenomenal tie-in with this. I think, I think you're dead on that that would make an incredible film trio to go see. You want your meta horror, here you go. Scream, Behind the Mask, and then Cabin in the Woods. I mean, you're getting a deconstruction of the entire genre in three great horror films. But
Right.
obviously, also in 2011 we had Scream 4. In the last, is it what? In the last 5 years we've had the last three Scream films, or in the last 4 years?
Yeah.
No, like I think 2019, 20 was Scream 5. I don't even remember.
No, I think it was post COVID, wasn't it?
So then, yeah, so it's got to be the last. Since 2020 we've had three more Scream films. Um, we've had Ready or Not, which does a lot with you know meta aspects and Final Girl lore. Uh, yeah, I think that Glosserman kind of had to was like, great, we have an awesome script. Shit, like this meta thing that we're gonna focus on, they just focused on it. All right, let's and oh, now there's this new thing called YouTube, and or Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. So we have to keep updating the script to get new aspects of like what it is to be meta. And I think they finally settled on a script that they liked after a long time, and then it just became about the funding, which again I think is baffling to me that horror is a genre where movies you've never heard of sometimes have two, three entries. you know
Right.
uh you think about Blumhouse's entire model is putting out a really cheap horror movie, making sure it makes double the budget in the first week, and then using that as like a logic to make more of those movies. And even if they're not great, it's like, oh, well, we made our budget back,
Right.
threefold.
Right.
So, who cares? Let's make, I don't know, Truth or Dare 2 or whatever.
Right.
Or so it's strange to me that for 20 years this movie has existed and nobody said, hey, let's go back to that well. They've made think about the fact that this movie came out in 2006.
Yeah.
I think Rob Zombie's Halloween is 2007. So there were
Wow.
so there were two Rob Zombie Halloween movies, and then there were three more Halloween movies. There was
Yeah.
a Friday the 13th terrible remake. There was a no, Friday the 13th was a decent remake. But there was the terrible Nightmare on Elm Street remake
There you go.
um after this movie.
Yeah.
Um so you these other franchises, uh we had 3 seasons of a Chucky TV show and a few more Chucky movies. We had
Yeah.
3 seasons of Ash vs. Evil Dead, and we have more Evil Dead movies coming out.
Right.
And it's very strange to me that this movie sat on a shelf and didn't get, obviously somebody liked it enough to push it for a really big Scream Factory Blu-ray that has tons of audio commentary, has behind the scenes documentaries about it. So it's like, if you're going to do all this work to produce a collector's edition Blu-ray, you would think that the audience is out there for a sequel to a slasher that ends on a cliffhanger. But
Right.
I mean, finally we're getting it. So now just the horror fan in me is just, my excitement level was up here, and now my trepidation level is up here of like, oh God, I hope they don't all come back to this 20 years later. And I just hope they don't blow it. I and I feel like it's always, you always run that risk when you are doing something that's kind of, when you're trying to sequel or remake something that has garnered some level of cult status.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm, because everyone who was involved in the making of the first one is back. I'm that makes me happy, and I think they'll do it justice. So I'm
Yeah.
very excited for it.
Yeah, man. And you know that when it comes out, we will be reviewing it on the fucking Lastercast, without a doubt. So, speaking of which, what else we got going on in the Lastercast right now?
Well, I just finished my spring break, and I spent my spring break posting a lot of shorts. I have, in terms of new movie reviews, I saw the new Faces of Death.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and I posted a 60-second short review of that. That's in theaters now. I also saw They Will Kill You, starring Zazie Beetz. Uh, I have a
Cool.
short review of that on the channel now.
Yeah.
Uh, I also posted, I posted a short video about Behind the Mask 2. And I posted a short video about Seven, because I finally got Charlotte to watch the movie Seven,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I'm almost 1995 to 1999, where Seven features.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I kind of posted a video saying, hey, why do people argue whether or not Seven is a horror movie when it's very obviously a horror
A horror
movie?
movie. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like I have a lot to say about that. I won't focus on it here, but basically, if Saw is called a horror movie without any hesitation,
Yeah.
Seven is a fucking horror movie.
Yes. 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 Totally agree
And
with you. That is good.
my aunt's reaction on Facebook when I told her that I let Charlotte watch it, keep in mind Charlotte is now 15 years old, was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know how you let her watch that. I remember when you see the head in the box. And I went, no, you don't, because
No,
you
you
don't.
don't. That's
And she
right.
was like, wait, you don't? And I was like, no, nobody. I was like, that's how you know it's a fucking horror movie, when you are convinced that you saw a head in the box that wasn't in the that is never on screen.
Yes. That is actually pretty awesome. Your aunt had like the fucking Mandela effect about Seven with the head in the box. That's cool.
I mean, I feel like that. I feel like there's a ton of that with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974. People will swear to you that you watch Chainsaw go into flesh.
Yep.
You never do. Uh, People will tell you that you watch the doctor, saw his foot off in Saw, and you do see him put the blade to his leg, but you never see him literally sawing it off. If you go back and watch the original Saw, it is actually weirdly tame. And I think that is what makes a great horror movie. If it psychologically convinces you that you saw shit you didn't see, it's a fucking horror movie, and it's a great one. So yeah, I have a bunch of shorts on the channel. I have a whole bunch of things that I'm working on. I have a bunch of book reviews that I'm going to be posting. I'm going to try to get one of my good friends who's an author whose book I read to maybe join us
Oh, okay.
for an interview. So
Shit, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, everything. But yeah, everything else is just thinking about going back to work tomorrow.
Oh,
The real horror movie of the world, going back to
yeah.
work after a vacation.
I can relate to that, my man. Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, well, thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. We hope that you guys, subscribe to our channel. We can always use some more subscribers. Tell us what you think about this movie as well, as Danny goes like this with the Blu-ray over there. And yeah, give us a like. We'll be back next time so you guys can find out which one of us actually rides a verse.